to be honest. Welcome everyone to Room 1, Panel 5. This panel is titled On Writing, and how damn exciting that is as well. We have 4 presentations in this panel, after which we'll have lots of lovely time to talk about the writing we've seen in head and maybe gather some ideas for our own writing as well. I am fizzing with excitement already, probably because I've had loads of coffee and presented twice already. Anyway, enough about that, right? So without further ado, I'd like to start the session off with Hazel Wright, who is going to give us a question in my right to write as I roam. Thank you, Hazel.
Oh, this is a bit impromptu because I thought originally we were sharing a video presentation on which I looked terribly miserable. But I'm talking instead, thank goodness. Having physically roamed the local community, collecting things seen and heard as research data, I'm currently looking more directly into family issues encountered on a daily basis, roaming through my own past and here, my daily life. Here is my context. When her husband died 20 years ago, an elderly relative came to live nearby, expecting that I would take over managing her affairs, as she had always let others, father, husband, do anything deemed difficult. At first, I did this willingly, recognizing that she had so recently lost her soulmate, someone we had both loved. And I have done my best, despite having a busy academic career and a family of my own. Indeed, my now grown-up children have played a vital role in providing additional support, but are increasingly busy with their own partners, homes, careers, pets, and very recently, my first grandchild. My or our wants versus her wants are a challenge. My husband and I are spread very thinly over everything at a time when we are looking back a little and recognising that 67, the current retirement age in the UK, marks a sensible point for seniors to be entitled to retire with a full pension. Some will want to continue working, others to give up. Yet others like me will want to dabble with those bits of their job that they most enjoy, but not every day or inflexibly. It's a time of readjustment and maybe a time to be both more selfish and less so. A time of realisation that there may be not as much time left as you would like to do the things you always intended to do. But at this point, my elderly relative is becoming increasingly needing, demanding, and difficult. Meeting her expectations is no longer rewarding, as communication is stressful. She cannot hear well. She likes to talk without listening, repeating and distorting well-worn memories, and most of the time refuses to wear her really essential hearing aids. There are other reasons too, and we are only a phone call away. Theoretically, I found an explanation for this in sociologist Nell Nodding's terms. I now do care, that is, solve problems, rather than doing caring, which is engaging emotionally, as any reciprocity in our interactions is long since spent. I think I work through a process I call care creep, borrowing from geography, which is my background. My sense of self and well-being leach away under the barrage of pressures my mind and body continually resist. I seek physical solutions. I stay physically healthy by taking long, fast walks that lower the blood pressure, often after I've paid a visit to her home. To stay emotionally healthy, I make written notes on the most notable and sometimes laughable absurdities that our interactions lead to. And later I fashion them into stories, blank verse, doggerel, and less labelable prose, thereby rendering them both memorable and forgettable. Some of these I've made into publishable pieces, topped and tailed and further explained in incredibly academic articles, but I've submitted them nowhere yet. I hesitate. I'm not sure how I feel about telling tales about living people. even if the focus is on me and my feelings. I'm worried about ethicality. I'm concerned about consequences for broader family relationships, even fear that not caring could be misconstrued as something more negative. I'm not guilty of neglect or cruelty, of bullying or meanness, only of trying to protect my emotional self and managing the demands upon my time. But like an egocentric toddler, my elderly relative is incapable of seeing perspectives other than her own. So my question for all of you here is, what can I publish? What can I send out into the wider world? And when? And this is what I want to talk about here. As I said in my abstract, that is my question, how to deal with this. Thank you.
So Shrav Shankar will now give us disparate islands, dissociation, and the practitioner's use of self.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So what I'm about to offer is a section, well, not quite a section, but an excerpt from my dissertation, which is in progress. It's my first time engaging with autoethnography, and today I hope to offer you a short poem, a bit of writing, and some artwork to accompany us. I'm going to try and see if I can share my screen. Okay.
Wow.
Right. We are here together, are we not? Looking at each other right now. I sense your gaze land upon me as I am in the darkness, many miles away. My hands grasp out for solace, lost between fingers that are here, but not here. They are not mine. What is mine if not this body or this mind? When was it taken from me? Was me ever mine? I offer you, the reader, this poem, one that was written during the initial stages of therapy, where I began to recognize and name my experience of dissociation. Describing dissociation as an experience itself seems in a way representing it as something it is not. Dissociation is a lack of experience, a sheet of ballistic glass stealthily erected between a person and their experience. A dulling, a lacking, a distance. Dissociation, as I would come to recognize it, has been part of my life since I was a child. A silent, silencing companion, who after years of therapy still remains by my side or at a distance, but never fully out of view. Dissociation has featured largely in crucial moments that have shaped my life. It seems fitting that it emerges here with me in this dissertation. The title for my dissertation comes from my experience of dissociation as I worked through it in therapy, and recognizing dissociation, I was able to begin to recognize the impact it had on me and my sense of self. The glimmer of the long blade of dissociation had cleaved my sense of self, much like the divergent movement of tectonic plates, separating them in time and space, leaving them to form their own islands as I grew older. My hope is to use my dissertation to offer a personal, situated perspective of what the naming, recognition, work, and bringing together these islands have been like, not only from the perspective of a person, but from a trainee in the field of counseling and psychotherapy. In my writing thus far, I have engaged with dissociation from the perspective of context, causality, and theory, but have actively stayed away from the lived experience of it, how it shows up in Anzaldua's conceptualization of the body-mind. When I feel about my experience with dissociation, the first feeling I land upon is resentment. Dissociation often meant that I could never really stay with experiences, emotions, or important events. Instead of a full-fledged illustration, I would be left with an outline, bereft of richness and depth. Instead of being fully immersed in what was happening around me, I would find myself partially there, but elsewhere instead, scattered across time and distance. When I think of the comparison to islands, I think of the depths of the chasms between the islands and what gets lost in between. When I started this topic several months ago, I sat down and focused on the feeling of dissociation, and I allowed a free flow of thought and feeling to emerge. In an instant, I was transported across 7 fragmented memories, ones that I could now recognize and own as part of my own created, coherent narrative. I offer these to you now. 2016, I'm in the final year of my undergraduate course in a module on consciousness. My lecturer speaks about breaks in consciousness and the different debates around what constitutes lapses in consciousness. I wonder about the times I have drifted away, about the times I have not been in my body. I feel panic. Is this not a normal way to feel? Is something wrong with me? Don't most people have trouble in remembering some things? 2008, I am walking to a class that I feel stressed about. I feel pulled away from my body and far away from the world. I almost get hit by a car. The loud honking pulls me back into my body. I am startled, but all right. My fingertips are numb and cold. 2018, I feel overwhelmed by what is happening around me. I lock myself in the bathroom, lay down on the deep blue IKEA Toft Bow mat, pull my knees to my chest, and wrap my arms around them. I try to pull myself back into my body, desperately. I feel some warmth return to my hands. Blue is comfort. Blue is safety. 2000X. My body feels ice cold and it is summer. I have seen my parents use scalding hot water to clean dirty dishes. If I use scalding hot water to shower, then I will be clean. I don't feel clean, but at least my body feels warm again. There is a set of clothes I will never wear again. I don't recognize the pictures of me from this time. 2020. I am sat in the waiting room of a clinic and have recently purchased a copy of The Body Keeps the Score. I do not make it past page 131 for the next few years. I notice my body grow colder as I progress in the book. My book still has marked pages from the sweatiness of my palms as I struggle to reach past a description of dissociation that felt unnervingly similar to my own. Surely when people say dissociation, they meant a diagnosable condition. Surely they didn't mean what I was feeling. 2010. I was hugged by a stranger. I know from context cues that this person should be safe, and yet I feel myself go numb, my body go stiff, and my throat clench up. I know that hugging someone can feel warm and comforting at times, but which one is the exception and which one is the norm? Maybe hugging is just something people pretend to enjoy. 2023. My client shares a painful experience with me. I feel overwhelmed by my emotions. Feeling them at this intensity, at this proximity, is not a usual feeling. I feel them as intense and then suddenly gone. I recognize that my dissociation has jumped in to do what it does, cut off the overwhelm. I stay with my body memory of the feeling and finish my session. When I am in a safer place, I gently immerse myself back into the feeling. What was it trying to tell me? I negotiate with the dissociation and then slowly reconnect, process, digest. This takes me 2 days of paced out work. My inner supervisor asks me, "What are you catching hold of?" Your body is a net in the unpredictable currents of the ocean. Things get tangled in that are not yours. Can I now say what is mine and not mine? I also felt in my writing that there was an aspect of my experience that wasn't captured, and I was connected to the offerings of artistic methods of autoethnography, including visual arts. And so I leave all of you with this depiction of dissociation, my lived experience of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrav. The images are potent, are they not, as well as your words? Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing what people made of that shortly. So our final presenter in this panel is Rolf Sundet, who's right here. I'm glad to say, please. Just remember to give your microphone. We're giving us a paper entitled "How Fragmented Can a Text Be and Still Be Readable? Is Life Continuous Anyway?" Wow.
Have any of you had a paper that was rejected? Or have you had a paper that when the reviews come, you sort of feel a bit angry, a bit hopeless, and you think, I'll better do what I should do what the reviewer says? Okay, so I'm not alone. That's good. Okay, so let's see if I can get this going. No?
Try now.
upturn. There it is. So this paper, you see, this paper was called Knausgård. I don't know if you know Karl Ove Knausgård. He's a Norwegian writer who's sort of really an autoethnographer, I think. He has a 7-volume books on his own life. Toril Moi, she's a Norwegian professor of literature, is at the Duke University. So this is about Knausgård, Moi, family therapy, and us, an autoethnographic excess. It's written by Ben Carlson, my colleague, and me. And it's refused in 3 journals. Lastly, the Journal of Autoethnography. We've had good advice from Alec Grant, but I must admit that there is a resistance to follow any advice that we get on this paper. So the paper has 3 parts. 2 is about our childhood, some childhood experiences. And 1 about questions related to family therapy using comments by Toril Moi and the work of Norwegian author Karl Ove Knausgård. And in this paper, we made no attempt to explain or create connections between the parts. It's simply the parts. And as I said, it's rejected again and again. So what I would like to do today is not to talk about the content of the paper, but thoughts on the review from the Journal of Autoethnography and its relationships to texts and life. I don't know who the reviewer is, and it might feel something, when I did this, it felt a bit like a revenge. But at the same time, I will argue that the reviews has been very helpful. So what I'm going to do is to read you what the reviewer says, and then the thoughts that it has elicited in me. So the reviewer says this manuscript has potential, but it is too complicated. So my thought, text should not be too complicated. Is that the message? But what about life? Life is complicated. The second, there are unclear aims. I can't. So a text should have clear aims with non-questionable parts. This is the message I get. And again, my question becomes, does life have clear aims and unquestionable parts? And anyway, how to grasp the longevity and the ramblings of life? So, then something happens with this one.
I know.
That's it. Several pages are devoted to Moi's multiple points on Knausgård. These could be precised in relation to a linear, greatly simplified paper with clear questions. So, points in texts are recommended to be precised in a linear, greatly simplified manner with clear questions. So again, is life linear? Greatly simplified with clear questions. What about the unclear problems in and of life? I didn't connect with the piece, and it did little for me. Now, we wrote this with a sort of, we were inspired, I think, by the evocative part of autoethnography. So when I read this, I became very happy. Because the text is at least evocative, in that it does little for the reviewer, which is an evoked response, and for me, responding is living. So this is quite clear, near to life. I got to the end of it, where it just ends. So a text should not just end, apparently. Good to know, only life just ends. Death is equifinal. I'm left not really knowing the point of the paper and how all the various strands of it fit together. So again, a text should have or make a point. And now there are arguments that there are no point to life. I'm not the guy who seeks meaning of life. I think living is enough. I don't really have meaning. As long as I live, I really don't have any meaning. My friend also say, the one who dies will know. So meaning is probably for the afterlife, or for atheists like me, there'll be nothing. A text should have various strands that should fit together. So does everything fit together? If it should, who should do the fitting? Me, you, the state, God, whatever. What about life itself? Maybe it doesn't want to be fitted together. Maybe it demands the right to be fragmented, disconnected, uncertain, always opening up for what it could, what it can and could become. So, the reviewer's conclusion. I would completely redraft this piece, remedying the criticism I've identified above. So to my conclusion, it will never happen. But I'm thankful for helping me see where texts and life differ. Still wondering though, how to write life, not just about life. Can life be written? If possible, I still have the hope that autoethnography can help me in this quest. And we still do not know what texts can become. Thank you.
This, the two presenters in the room, three of you like to come in. Well, a very rich diversity of offerings there with lots to think about, an awful lot to comment on and ask questions about. So not hog the mic anymore, but ask for questions. You, sir.
Just on the last conversation, I just wonder have you considered submitting that back to the author?
Yeah.
So their feedback, that would be quite a brilliant piece.
So, for those online, the question was, has Rolf considered resubmitting what he has just presented to the Journal of Autoethnography?
Since I don't want to change the text, I thought of making a coda, you know, or afterwards, just doing this. So we'll see. And maybe try Journal of Autoethnography again. We'll see.
Thank you. I saw Chris Poulos had his hand up there as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the suggestion came to me, the same one, that you could write this. I did a paper years ago that I got a similar rejection on, so I wrote it back as a dialogue between me and the reviewers. And yeah. So I wrote back, I just sent it back I wrote it as a performance dialogue between me and the reviewers, and they loved it. So, so you just never know what might emerge. I was glad to see I was not the reviewer on this paper. I do review for them, but and I probably would have said very different things. But lovely. And I just want to say, you're writing. Oh my God, beautiful co-authored piece there, and everyone else. And then Hazel's question. Could you repeat your question? Because it was so long ago. Yeah.
Me?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm caught eating nuts. I really wanted some comments on what you can share when the people you're writing about are still alive, and what you want to say from your own perspective isn't totally positive. It's the ethics around all this personal stuff being put out on the ether. I mean, I'm getting better because I'm sharing it online like this, but I still haven't published the things that I've written because I shared them with family, but I don't know that I dare send them out there because you can't retract them once they're out.
I don't have a great answer. My two books do treat with that issue. One called Accidental Ethnography and the other called Essentials of Autoethnography. I do deal with that. There is no one right answer to that, but I think one way to do it, that I did it, was to fictionalize the accounts and mask the identities. That was one way of doing it. So I changed the names to protect the guilty, so to speak.
Tremendous, thank you. Another suggestion for you, Hazel, might be Alec Grant's paper from 2017. And I forgot the title of it, so I'll have to send you it by email later. If anybody can remember the paper from the Sociology Yearbook, 2017, that Alec wrote. Oh, thank you, Writing the Dead in Two Parts. Yes. I'd recommend reading that as well. Writing the Dead in Two Parts, it's called, Hazel.
Writing the Dead. Okay.
I think that Beth has a question.
First of all, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. I loved all the presentations, absolutely fabulous. I've got kind of three questions, but one is a comment to Hazel, because I feel I've submitted my thesis, and I've already contacted the university to say I want it to go in embargo, because I feel the same, in the sense that I wrote about my mom and my relationship with her, although, like the previous speaker said, I combined different facets of different Black experiences in there. And it was really strange, because sometimes when I spoke to my mom about what I was writing, she'd go, that didn't happen, or that didn't happen like that. And I remembered reading Tony Adams' book, where he also had that kind of discussion. And I think it's very difficult. And that's why I want it to go into embargo, because I need that time to think about what I should keep in and what I need to let go. And also, do I want to put my neurotic state as well on page for people to read that don't know me? And in my research, I've also wrote about conversations I had with my supervisors, and I said, are you all right with this? And they went, yeah. But coming from a Black community, Black culture, where we try to keep everything secret, it feels a bit awkward. So I understand.
Can I come back and just say
Yes.
thank you for that? But also, I think you hit a nail on the head that I'm also becoming to move towards, which is this idea of timing. Because what I ended up doing by mistake, really, by writing things as they happen, and I fictionalized some of it, but some of it I actually feel I owe it to society, to be honest, about how it feels at the time. And I have come to the conclusion that maybe it's not a problem, except for my kind of career prospects as a retired person, to not publish, because as long as I keep the authentic stories intact, they will be a record of how it feels when you're living it. And maybe at a later date, I may add beginnings and endings about, you know, what you're talking about, the sort of the issues around it. But at the moment, I feel if I don't write it as it happens, as it's genuine, I lose that authentic voice. And maybe that's what we often lose, because people don't speak out at the time.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Maybe
Thank you both.
yeah, interesting. And lastly, Shrav, can you actually share your pictures, because they were so moving?
Sure, I'm sure I can find a way to do that.
Thank you. That's it.
I have a couple of questions in the room, so I'm going to go to Beth and Pablo-Jones next.
Thank you. Shrav, this is a question, or actually not a question. Congratulations, but that seems inappropriate as well. Thank you for being brave. I know that sort of presentation is very costly and it takes a lot of courage, and I really appreciated your courage across the screen. And I wondered, have you come across these things that you were speaking about today whilst in a research process, or are you doing your research process on the things that you realize about yourself? So I'm assuming you're on a study. Are you doing a doctorate or something? Yeah.
I'm doing a master's of counseling.
Yeah. So did you start the master's knowing what you know now, or did they reveal themselves more and more to you through the process of researching? That's my question.
So I think I connected a lot with some readings about accidental autoethnography for this reason, and a lot of this started to build, I think, over the course of a lifetime, but I was able to fall more into theory when I came into the master's. So it kind of has ended up like a little Ouroboros, so it kind of feeds into each other. So I would maybe say that the settings for that were already there a few years before, but the actual theoretical engagement just kicked in during my actual research degree.
Thank you. I'd love to keep in touch.
Likewise.
Thanks, Shrav. Freak Sanders has a question.
Yes, I have a question for you, Shrav, and I guess it also met you yesterday online.
I'm so sorry, I can't hear you clearly.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I have a question for you, Shrav. Could you comment on Rolf Sundet's question, is life continuous anyway, and your perspective on that?
Continuous is a bit tenuous for me, because I feel like a lot of my experiences have been a bit fragmented, and they don't tend to follow a neat temporal alignment. But I do feel like the continuity you give is through narrative. At least that's the perspective I'm taking right now. And so I kind of build that with my own narrative. That's how I offer it to myself.
Okay, let it be.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody. Really lovely set of papers. And the connection for me is about breaking silences. So, you know, you're all talking about breaking silences. And although Esther and PJ talked about this a bit, and there was a kind of allusion in everybody's paper to this, I'm also interested in the emotion work that's involved when you break those silences, and actually the effort it takes to break the silence, and whether or not, once you've done that, you feel better or not.
Esther, Peter, do you want to talk to that?
I'll get it first. Yeah, I think one of the biggest taboos is a relationship between a psychotherapist and their patient, and all therapists will come across that in all ethics codes. Yet it happens, and more often than we know, because people are not willing to talk. And I definitely feel, and of course there's a very long story and a very long process behind this, but I definitely do feel a great relief in being able to say, and I'm really a disciple of, or a prophet for, finding language for the unspeakable, and in writing together and then presenting, and in a, obviously in a bit of still a censored way, by not putting it on the internet and not getting my patients to read about what I'm going to do in Bristol, is a way of protection. But I do think that there was great relief, and maybe you can also respond on your own behalf, PJ, but there was great relief in firstly finding language, and secondly being able to create a story. And and just saying it out loud. And I did want to say, just in response to Hazel's question also, I think there's a very big difference between therapeutic writing and then writing for an audience, or academic writing, autobiographical, autoethnographic, and so on. And there's many versions of the same story that I think make it possible in the end then to write it in a way that's not really just blurting out in a therapeutic writing way. So yeah, for me it was definitely some sort of I suppose digestion.
Yeah, where does one begin? I think, we were in a therapeutic process for many years, and that's a certain framing, and within that frame, a whole lot can be said. But there is a lack of reciprocity there. And when this frame shattered, and suddenly we were able to enter into a kind of a to and fro, a sudden revealing of that person behind the therapeutic mask, someone who I'd been observing for 5 years, that sudden shattering just brought at first a torrent of words and of relationship. And then over the years, a recrafting of that into something that was more distilled. So, and I did find it enormously, I don't want to say therapeutic, but it was in a sense anti-therapeutic. It was breaking beyond that kind of distancing, staging of the therapeutic relationship. And that was truly transformative.
Does any more of our panelists want to speak to Hazel?
Can I raise a question that's actually kind of addressed to Rolf in many ways? This whole issue of publication and review, where quite often people want you to have written the article they'd like to have written, rather than the one that you have written. And I mean, I used to be a publisher for 20 years, so I've been on both sides of the fence. And I think sometimes that, sticking to your guns like Rolf is doing, it's a good thing. But I wonder whether we ever get published if we do that. Any thoughts from anybody else?
Yes. We've been there.
Thank you. Does it matter if you don't get published?
Oh, is that for me? Well, the thing is...
For everyone.
I'm going to answer anyway. For me, it matters in the sense that I'm still trying to show how I'm active, and you write all this material with a reason, and you consider audience, and therefore to not do anything with it, to me, does matter, because I'm actually, when I get asked, when I renew my visiting fellowship, what I've been doing, it'll look like nothing. So there's a,
I think there's something in what I'm very new to all of this. Very new to autoethnography. It's my first conference, and I just think about life and humanity, and actually the last presentation really spoke to this for me around the process is so important. And I'm a student at the moment as well, and I think what we're asked to do is always to think about the outcome, which is the publishing or the end of the thesis or something like that. And actually you lose a lot of beauty, I think, in some ways, when you just think that the ultimate aim is the publication. There's so much. I think your presentation was really powerful for me, because it was a critical lens, which we're told that we do in academia. That's what publications and stuff are about, but actually it's lost. Whereas your thread was very critical. It was putting the questions kind of back. And why would we expect that to get accepted? That's kind of the counter movement, right? If it's not getting accepted, you've probably done your job pretty well.
Thank you. I enjoyed that comment a lot. More on that later. I can see online. Hi, I can see Divok and Laura have a question there. It'd be lovely to hear from you. Oh, nice to see you.
Hi. Just in regards to Hazel and Rolf, there's almost like this tension between remaining authentic to yourself, but then juggling that with being successful. Just wondering how that gets navigated, if at all.
The problem I have is I know how to get published and have done, but not when I'm doing this kind of personal stuff. Maybe it's just a question of time and learning and trying. I don't know.
Could you repeat again, please? Just a question.
Yes, certainly. I'm just wondering how the tension between remaining authentic, but also maybe achieving success as well. I guess it's arriving at a definition of what success is for a start. But there always seems to be a bit of a tension between remaining authentic, but also trying to achieve this sort of perception of success as well. So I'm just wondering how that gets navigated, because I'm trying to navigate that. I want to remain true to myself in my work, but I also know you need to make a living. So, yeah.
I've always struggled with writing, and entered late into academia, a sort of a late bloomer, if I can formulate it like that. And to me, I realized that academia is, when it comes to writing, a ritual on how to write. And in any profession, I think you have to go through these rituals. But it's limiting. It's like a philosopher that we have contact with in Norway, Todd May, who says that you can narrate life, but life isn't a narrative. Mm-hmm. So that means that at least the paper that we tried, I think, was to break with these academic rituals. At the same time, both Bengt and I were professors when we did it, and I'm not sure that I could have done that before, because there is a power issue, and it's if I want to climb on the ladder and get more money and the freedom to write papers like this, I need to go through the rituals. So, but it also makes me aware of the power issues in academia and what is accepted and non-accepted. But I'm not sure that I could have written it before I became a professor. I'm sorry. That's the system. But at the same time, for me, it's also a struggle to find a voice, not only a voice. I mean, I've always been a talkative guy, so I have a voice and I can use my voice, but use my hand to put words on paper is a very different thing. And because there are all these demands on how to do it, this is certainly an experiment, I think. And that's why I will not change it. Although it's probably from an academic point of view, it's a terrible paper. Okay, that's what I can say, I think.
That's great, thanks, Rolf. I can see we have about 3 minutes left, if anybody, Krista was. Bring you this, and then everybody online will hear you as well.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the panelists. All of their presentations, there was little bits that resonated with the psychotherapy, the illicit relationship. Young immediately jumped out. Yeah, and it's very telling. It's of the time and the current belief, what's right, what's wrong. Also, Hazel, I really found the question, when you raised the question, I felt it's a valid question, and that we go through the process where we have to question, why am I writing this? And I found, because my work is predominantly based on my lived experience, and of course it's going to involve my family and friends. But what I found by doing the writing, and not necessarily only presenting in the academic circles, I take my work out into the community. And what I found when I presented the work, like listening to you, the audience are actually engaging with the topic. So I was listening to you and thinking, gosh, it's great to hear someone talking about the realities about being a carer. I didn't care that it was your elderly relative, or it could have been an auntie, or it could have been your mother. It meant nothing to me. And what I found was that the audience, when I presented about the trauma that I experienced, they really appreciated, and as Beverly said, hi Beverly, great to see you. As Beverly said, it's taboo. In the Caribbean, it's a protective mechanism. It's not that we're shy, it's protective. We are so negatively represented. We don't want to add to the representation that we are a problem people. So hence, if you talk about issues of trauma, it feels like we're joining in the negative narrative. But what that does is silence. So when I decided I was doing autoethnography, it was predominantly that I wanted to talk about taboo subjects. So probably I came in from an activist position, probably like Rolf, I have a voice. I've never had a problem with a voice. But Hazel, I feel, and everyone here, that it's important that if your subject is important, you could disguise it as much as you want. It's the core and the central message that you're saying that I feel it's important and needs to be said. And thank you all. And around being a psychotherapist and training to be a psychotherapist, that's a whole different other language we all have to learn, and then we have to question that. So the idea about the self within psychotherapy and what self are we talking about, that's a whole different narrative and needs a bigger conversation in itself. So thank you for bringing that forward, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for finishing exactly an hour after we started, which means you are all now to be rewarded with food. But we thank our panellists again for the fantastic contributions and all the wonderful things that come from the room.